Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Amigos Magazine Reviews. We have here a March-April 1989 issue of Nintendo Power magazine. This was gifted to me by none other than Aaron himself for my birthday. He knows what a huge fan I am of Nintendo Power, of Nintendo as a company, especially the Nintendo Entertainment System. And this is one of the issues that I look back on with a tremendous amount of nostalgia. I can't wait to look through it with you. On the front here, we've got a ninja. There's the Ninja Gaiden, or as we said back in the day, Ninja Gaiden, is the cover story. We've got a ninja clad all in black with fists up and ready for battle, and he looks to be set against a very Miami Vice looking city, and then behind him the moon rises ominously over some mountains that look like they might house Dracula's castle. So a very cool looking piece of cover art. In the first couple of years of Nintendo Power, they commissioned all original art for their issues. It wasn't just, regular game art, slightly redrawn or anything like that. A lot of times it was mixed media. You'd have clay. The first issue was Super Mario Brothers 2, and it was a scene from the game, all done in clay. So this is just another one of these, and this also hails from the early days of Nintendo Power when they were still a bi-monthly publication. So $3.50 had to tide you over throughout the entire months of March and April. So anyway, on the cover, in addition to Ninja Gaiden, you've got a preview of something called TMNT. They claim it to be explosive, more Link adventures, plus the CES report. That should be interesting to look at. I bet CES looks a lot different in 1989 than it did in 2019. Of course, it didn't happen in 2020. So, all right. So we open it up here, and we were immediately greeted with exactly the kind of picture that 8-year-old me would want to see. You're riding the biggest, fastest, most powerful wave in video games. Powerful titles, powerful graphics, powerful choices. This is a kid with a backwards hat and sunglasses on, wearing some jammers, some Bermuda shorts, and he is cresting a wave, and on his surfboard are piles and piles of NES games. And there are he's actually holding a stack of NES games also as he rides the surfboard. So this is every kid's dream in 1989. I was 8 years old, probably the same age as this kid, and there was nothing cooler than surfing, wearing sunglasses, and playing Nintendo. This is the thing that you have to realize about Nintendo Power is that there is no advertising in Nintendo Power. This was put out by Nintendo for Nintendo. So that was actually one of the selling points for me as a kid, was that there were no ads. Little did I know that the ads were the previews and the reviews themselves. But all I knew was that there was a lot more game coverage in these magazines than the other magazines that I looked at, and I didn't care about the other systems. So after I finished my subscription to Antic magazine with the Atari, there was nothing else in my life. Antic sadly went away and became Start, the Atari ST Resource. Lame. But anyway, Nintendo Power, I used to borrow my friend Amber her back issues and just pour through them. This is years before I got a Nintendo. So anyway, on the right side, we have the welcome message from the editor. I guess this was the first issue with a preview section to come out, so you could see what new titles were coming up. The table of contents again. Everything about Nintendo Power, because they weren't trying to cram as much text as possible into every page, there's a lot of breathing room, a lot of white space in Nintendo Power, and you really feel like the games that they cover have a chance to sort of spread out a little bit. This is covering, of course, the Adventure of Link CES report. Also Hudson's Adventure Island, so it'll be interesting to see that. Lots of, let's see, who was the editor? Publisher was M. Arakawa, looks to be the only U.S. staff member. Editorial consultants Howard Lincoln on there for sure. And a bunch of other people that I do not recognize. Oh, Howard Phillips is on there too as a senior editor. Okay, now we go into the mailbag section. Let's just read a couple of these letters, shall we? The first one says, I am 83 years old. I bought a Nintendo Entertainment System 2 years ago. I love Nintendo. I presently live at Rosewood Retirement Home. We play at least 5 hours a day and we have a Nintendo Fun Club. We have 6 members in our club and over 43 games. We've completed Super Mario Bros., Metroid, Metal Gear, Kid Icarus, Double Dragon, and Super Mario Bros. 2. Our club has recently subscribed to Nintendo Power. The message our club wants to convey is that you're never too old to play the NES. So that's an interesting choice of letter to lead off Nintendo Power with. You know, let's not beat around the bush. Your average reader of Nintendo Power is probably not 83 years old, probably not 33 years old. What you're going to get is you're going to get the kids that want it, and you're going to get the parents that are kind of looking over their shoulder to make sure that there's nothing inappropriate going on. And this is a very savvy move by the editorial team at Nintendo Power, because, you know, if you read that message as a parent, you are comforted. You're saying, okay, well, this seems like, you know, Nintendo, it's not so bad. And this magazine is featuring letters from our elders. So, you know, this is, okay, you can get the subscription, you know. Very smart move. I think Nintendo was being very savvy here. In fact, most of these letters come from parents. This is something that I don't think, now, granted, I am not particularly well versed in the UK magazine scene, but I cannot imagine that a Spectrum magazine or an Amiga magazine in 1989 was leading things off with a bunch of letters from parents talking about how wholesome and fun the Nintendo was. There's one here that says, I teach piano at home and use a computer in my teaching. Talking about how after lessons are completed, the students are free to play any game they choose. So, and of course the NES is the favorite. So, and then there are some other things too. A letter from a high school English teacher talking about how the Nintendo games encourage problem solving. I think only one of these letters is actually from a kid, this 15-year-old 9th grade student at St. Edward's Upper School. So that is the letter section. Again, interesting, and yeah, it sure is different. It sure is different. Now we dive right in to the game coverage. So again, because Nintendo Power had full editorial control, and they weren't dependent on filling up their pages with a lot of advertising. I mean, Nintendo Power is the thickness of your average gaming magazine from back in the day. But because it's just all good, because it's nothing but game coverage. You get these pages that are really drawn well and draw you into the game. This is coverage that you can enjoy even if you do not own the game, and even if you do not own an NES. Trust me. You learn the names of all of these, you know, all of the items in Zelda 2. There's beautiful artwork, you know, sort of bespoke artwork. It's like a half page, you know, fully realized maps. I think at this point they were still taking individual screenshots and putting them together. You can sort of see the outlines if you look really hard on the screen. But I just think that this is, if you're going to cover a game in a magazine, this is the way to do it. This is, I think, probably a 6-page spread. So this is with a special coverage of the 5th Palace. It's possible that this is just continuing on from an earlier issue of Nintendo Power. Again, full maps drawn out here, hints on how to beat the boss. I just think that this is really attractive. I never really liked Zelda 2, to be honest with you. I think that this is the one that Aaron likes, but to me it was really difficult, and I never knew where to go. I never had the full game. Zelda 2 was a game that I rented, and back when you used to rent games, they would put, Nintendo actually sued some high-level renters, I think maybe Blockbuster or somebody, for photocopying the instructions, because of course kids would either lose or steal the instructions and not return them, so they would photocopy the books, and Nintendo said no, you can't do that. So after threat of litigation, there was a whole cottage industry of people that wrote small sort of quick guides, and they would paste those to the plastic clamshells that NES games came in. When you rented games from Blockbuster or from your Video Vault, was our local place, they would come in these bespoke clamshell packages, and the instructions would be pasted to the inside of that clamshell. So anyway, that was all I had to go off of, and it was not enough in Zelda 2. So I enjoyed it like I enjoyed all the games, but it wasn't one of my favorites for sure. This next page, another map of the 6th Palace, and then a breakdown of all the different types of magic used in Zelda 2. I'm going to take a second to get a drink of water. And then finally wrapping up the Zelda 2 coverage, talking about the locations that you must get to reach the Great Palace and the end of the game. So that wraps up the Zelda 2 coverage, and we dive right into Nestor's CES report. Okay, so Nestor is the sort of tood-filled kid mascot of Nintendo from back in the day. I think he was actually probably created for Nintendo Power by himself, just for Nintendo Power. And he was a kid that, I always sort of pictured him kind of like Pee Wee Herman, where he was like, he was nice, but he had a little bit of an edge to him, And I don't know why I compared him to Pee Wee Herman, but I always did in my mind. Or like Bart Simpson, maybe definitely not as dangerous as Bart Simpson, but somebody that you would feel like if you were hanging out with him, you would think this guy is inherently more cool than I am. So the 1989 Winter Consumer Electronics Show held in sunny Las Vegas. It says that over 100,000 people attended the show, looking for what's new in TVs, VCR stereos, and best of all, video games. So this is long before E3, long before a standalone video game trade show, and CES was where it was at. Looks like Nintendo Power had their own booth at the festival, and it looks pretty neat. A bunch of issues around the. It looks like a Nintendo Power obelisk in the center, and then there's a ring around it that are filled with Nintendo Power issues. Kind of cool. Okay, and this looks like it's expressed to us. Nestor's schedule is like a board game where he's traveling around all of the different booths. He says he starts out at the Bandai booth at 10 o'clock, and he finds something called the Mega Controller, which he compares to a mini computer. I'm not sure why he does that, because all this appears to be is a game controller, but it's very big. I'll have to do some more research on the Bandai Mega Controller. Then he visits Capcom and Sunsoft. I always thought it was funny. It says 11:30 a.m. saw Terminator prototype, plays like Dragon's Lair. That is not the the Terminator game we ended up getting, which I believe is a well, it's a multi-genre affair. I think there's a side-scrolling part, and then there's also a isometric truck or motorcycle driving part. Or no, maybe that is Terminator 2. I'll have to check out Terminator 1. I just can't believe that it really does play like Dragon's Lair. Jalico is next. American Sammy. Ninja Taro is the game that he looks at. I'm not familiar with that. He visits High Tech and Vic Tokai. I always thought Vic Tokai was a cool name, and Golgo 13 was a cool game. I'm not sure about Kid Cool, though, which is another Vic Tokai game that he mentions. Coming around the bend, you've got one of Aaron's favorite games here, the Three Stooges. You know, for some reason, I thought that the Three Stooges was a later release. I thought that was a 90s game, but I guess it came out in 89, so that means it must have come out in like 88 for the Amiga. Then Game Tech, FCI, and LJN. So between Terminator and Jason, we've got two properties that are based on R-rated movies. Nintendo being so family friendly at this time, I always found that to be a little bit incongruous. Then we've got Hal Broderbund, popular PC publisher, Amiga publisher. And then Milton Bradley, who published Jordan vs. Bird 1-on-1, which they definitely didn't do that for the computers. I wonder why EA didn't publish it. Maybe they hit their cap already for the amount of games that they were supposed to publish. Then he travels to Ultra, which is really Konami, for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Konami's booth had Bayou Billy, which is it's a game that's a cross between Double Dragon. There is a driving component, like an over-the-shoulder driving component, and there is also a shooting component. So this is one of the most varied games on the Nintendo. However, I never found it very fun, but it does let you do those three things. You've got the Acclaim booth with WrestleMania, SNK with Lee Trevino Fighting Golf. They don't mention the fighting part, but I know that that's the name of that game. Tecmo and Data East rounds it out with Bad Dudes, another one of Aaron's favorite games. So lots of interesting stuff going on at CES for Nintendo in 1989. Yeah, what I wouldn't give to have some video footage. I'll have to look up on YouTube to see if there's anybody walking around and checking it out. Okay, and then there's a couple other previews on this next page that Nestor reports back. Fester's Quest, one of the most difficult and unfun games of all time. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mega Man 2, Who Saved Roger Rabbit? I don't think that that's what that's called. Who Framed... Yeah, I think maybe... I'm not sure if they meant to do that or not, but they call it Who Saved Roger Rabbit. Yeah, just some other previews. On this other page, there is a contest that you can enter to win a trip to Summer CES in Chicago. And it's to do with the Power Glove. So I guess Mattel wanted to obviously promote the Power Glove by Mattel. This is after, I guess, the movie The Wizard came out, because I think that there are some scenes from The Wizard here on the page. Although I can't remember if this is from the Wizard or if it's just from the TV ad for the Power Glove. But it says, "Move over, Michael Jackson. This glove will make you a video superstar. Called the Power Glove, this controller by Mattel should be out by Christmas. It works when you move your hand in front of the screen. Technically, it works with ultrasound." Technically, I'm not sure if that's true. I don't think that anyway. It says, and of course this is Nestor writing in his own voice here. It says, "The demo games included a handball game, which looked easy, and a tank commander game." I've never used a Power Glove before. I'd like to try it out. So I've seen them, you know, at various shops and things, but I've only used a U-Force, which is the thing that It looks like a clamshell, like a laptop clamshell, and you wave your arms around it and move around. That's the only thing that I've used. Mattel says that the Power Glove should be under $90. Part player, part machine, you've got it all. And then you've got Howard, who's sort of the parental figure to the Nestor kid. He says, who knows what we'll see in Chicago? Maybe Super Mario Brothers 3. Okay. Turning the page, we go to Ninja Gaiden. So, Ninja Gaiden, I wasn't aware of this at the time, but you know, Ninja Gaiden is famous for having some of the first cutscenes found in console gaming. These were displayed in what Nintendo Power calls cinema display scenes, where the screen goes widescreen, which just means, you know, the black bars come down and the story unfolds. I always thought Ninja Gaiden was an awesome game. I still do, actually. It's tough, but I can at least get through the first couple levels, and I love the way that your ninja, I mean, he really acts like a ninja. He flips, he stabs. I mean, what else do ninjas do, right? So in this page, it breaks down all of the different power-ups your ninja can acquire. The fire wheel, the time freeze, and of course the weapons, the throwing star, the ninja windmill throwing star, and the art of the fire wheel. So all these are available to you as the ninja. Okay, here we are, and this is another two-page spread of the first area. You have a complete map of the level, plus the locations of all of the power-ups. And then on the bottom, you have a novelized account of the story. I wouldn't say maybe not novelized, but you have a text account of the story that fills in a lot of the blanks that the cutscenes themselves do not. There's a lot more text in here than what you get on the screen. It really does get you fired up to play the game. It ends with this in big blue text: I'll avenge the death of my father at any cost. And here on the other side, Area 2, Jay's Bar, I think one of the most famous end bosses in Nintendo history, this barbarian guy. He looks really misshapen. He walks with a hunchback. He carries a big meat cleaver. It says, yeah, he basically, he just sits around in his bar and waits for you. Yeah. Turning the page here, we have Act 2 fully displayed in Ninja Gaiden. Which is something called the Outpost and Death Valley. Definitely not as colorful. I always felt like the second stage of a lot of games was a letdown, because you always go into some place with a lot of concrete, not a lot of bright colors. It looks like a construction zone. And then Death Valley, of course, that name doesn't necessarily inspire you to think, boy, this is going to be some lush greenery here. So at any rate, the story also continues down here at the bottom of the page, the story of Act 2, where the femme fatale is introduced. And then the same thing. On the next page, you've got Act 3. Act 3 is called Crystal Lake. I wonder if they licensed that from the Friday the 13th folks, because Bomberhead looks like he's wearing sort of a ski mask. He's New York's worst, apparently, according to the magazine. The Lord of Evil, the man with an iron fist. He has the mind of a villain and the strength to take what he wants. It's flavor text like that when you sat down and you played this game, you remembered that. And it wasn't just some dude, you know? How many games where you're just fighting against some dude? Nintendo Power really empowered the imagination to work while you're playing these. It was like an expanded manual. And I think that on computer games, especially the better computer games that came with things like a novel or feelies or things like that, you need those sorts of things to fully immerse yourself in the story. And And Nintendo Power was how I did that. You know, I would read these magazines cover to cover multiple times. And that way, when I sat down in front of the game, I felt like I was finally getting a chance to take part in the story. And it was really special. More Ninja Gaiden coverage here. We have Act 3, Area 2 is known as the Lizard Mountains. And Area 3 is Yomi's Cave. So on the bottom here, this is kind of an interesting sidebar. What is a ninja? So this is introducing your game player to what exactly a ninja is. If you didn't know what a ninja was by '89, you'd miss the boat because the ninja craze was in full swing. But they talk about your throwing stars, your caltrops, otherwise known as the makibishi, the ninja sword, which is interesting that they don't call it like a katana or something, just a ninja sword. Maybe it is not the same as a ninja sword. It looks like it's straight, so maybe that's why. Your sickle and chain, and then all of the many ninja arts. The art of Suiten, the art of hiding beneath the surface of lakes or streams while breathing through a hollow reed. I don't need to practice that art, I don't think. There's also the art of Doten. This is the ninja's method of hiding under the ground to spy on his enemies. And there's even something called Konoha Gakure, the art of concealment. This is where a ninja stirs up a whirlwind of leaves in which to hide. All right, and finally, we reach the final castle. I guess that this is the final castle in Ninja Gaiden on the cover that we saw earlier. There are 3 more acts that they do not go into great detail about. And they catch you up on the story, not all the way, but just a little bit more. Enough to leave you hanging and be like, boy, I really want to get this game. And then from the end of Ninja Gaiden, we jump right into a totally different game, Hudson's Adventure Island. This is interesting in a number of reasons. One is that the name of the publisher is included in the title. You don't get that very often, you know? In fact, I'm trying to think about when that ever happens. Like, you never hear about, like, Capcom's Mega Man, or you know, the only analogous thing I can think of is in the Sid Meier games. You know, Sid Meier's Pirates or Civilization, but that's a designer. That's not a publisher. But at any rate, Hudson's Adventure Island, I believe, is a copy of a Sega game. I don't know if it's Wonder Boy. I want to say it's Wonder Boy, maybe like the first Wonder Boy game. And it was so surreal to me the first time that I saw this in an arcade. It was in a Pizza Hut here in Hurricane. When I was a kid, they'd rotate games in and out. And I remember it was a cocktail Wonder Boy. I'm going to keep calling it Wonder Boy, even if it's not Wonder Boy. And I was watching the demo screen, and then I put a quarter in it, and I couldn't believe it because it was scene for scene the same as Adventure Island, but it had a different dude in there. And of course, you know, back in the day, you didn't know what was going on. And I kept thinking, well, am I wrong about, is this not a game that I've played on the Nintendo? So it was a very weird experience, and one that I still remember to this day. Anyway, what is Adventure Island? Adventure Island is a side-scrolling platform game that you play a little dude called Master Higgins, and you progress through the levels. It's a typical platformer. What makes it special is you get to ride a skateboard, and that's cool. There are a variety of projectiles you can throw. I mean, in this day and age, it would definitely be categorized as a generic platformer. But back when the platformer genre was still new, it was really cool. It was really cool. One of the fun things in this game is that whenever you don the skateboard, you put on a little helmet and you ride it, and when you get knocked off your skateboard, the helmet stuff flies away. As you look at the maps of the stages, you see how linear these games were. We talk about all the time how European style platformers are maze-like. They often employ vertical scrolling, and these levels are definitely not that. They are straight across the world. There's some neat looking enemy types here that they've blown up. You've got, it's so funny to look at these, because all I can think about is, well, why didn't you just, you know, use the magic eraser on some of these sprites in Photoshop and get rid of this stuff, because you can see where they've been cut out. But you've got the snail and the frog. They've all got clever names. So yeah, Hudson's Adventure Island. Round 2, round 3. It's just so funny. Look at this on the side here. Round 2, round 3, round 4. This is a fold out. Nintendo Power always came with a poster. And so as we fold this out here, you can see that the levels are all spread apart. There we go. They're all very linear. I mean, just straight across the board. They do account for height a little bit by doing different things, you know, with the way that the photographs are. But yeah, it would be interesting to see how many games were just like this. I will say that the boss, this area boss here, he's very detailed. It's clear that he was drawn all at once. I bet he has no movement animation at all. He just sort of you know, slides across the screen. But he does look very detailed, even though he's just portrayed in various shades of red. Let's look at what our poster is. Oh, move the mouse out of the way so you can see this in all its glory. This is Strider, and he is rappelling down from his craft, and he's ready for action. If you know anything about the NES version of Strider, it is a completely different game than the arcade version. It is almost like a action role-playing game. Yeah. And again, here it is. New title. So this is a Strider preview. In these previews, Nintendo always put the power meter here, and then they left a blank player meter right here. And this was so you could read the preview for yourself and you could gauge how excited you were to play this game, which I guess it's kind of cool. You know, it's an early form of interactivity. I'm not sure if I ever took out my marker and filled in my own player meter, but I definitely remember seeing this back in the day. I don't know how long it stayed, if it lasted until the 90s. I think that my first issue of Nintendo Power, I want to say, I know it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think it was TMNT Tournament Fighters was my first issue of Nintendo Power. But I know it had a cover, a TMNT cover. I think it was in 91 or 92. And up until then, all I had were issues from my friend Amber to read through. So we've got 4 new titles in the preview section. Even in this preview section, though, it's very well laid out. It's not just like a one-page preview. You've got a whole stage here, drawn items. The amount of illustration in these magazines, when you think about how much illustration is in magazines now, is truly staggering. This is back when magazines probably employed scads of artists to draw these pictures, and for no other reason than just to put them in here. Cool. This is another one of my favorite games, Cobra Triangle. This is like a speedboat version of RC Pro-Am, where you're racing around. And you are there. It's got multiple paths. It's also kind of similar to Micro Machines, I guess, too. Oh, and here we are with Bayou Billy. We just talked about this. So Bayou Billy got very high scores on the power meter. That's definitely the most powerful game in this preview section. It is, like I said, it works on every level except for the gameplay level. It just doesn't play that well, and it's sort of difficult. There are a lot of sections where you have to cross water. Of course, this game is called Bayou Billy, so it makes sense. But you know, platforming in a 3D space, if you've ever tried to do any platforming in a game like Double Dragon, you'll realize how difficult that is. Up next is the shooting section of the game. So the shooting section of the game plays just like a shooting gallery type game, like Hogan's Alley or any number of games that you might have played in the arcade. But it's a neat addition. One of the things that is less than ideal is that you can't just skip right to the shooting sections. You have to progress through the game, and I was never good enough to get to the shooting sections, so I never got to experience them until I got a Game Genie, and then I checked it out. And finally, we have the driving section. And on the driving section, it's I was going to say it plays sort of like pole position, but it's even more. I think it's even, you're higher up than you are in pole position. There's not really a racing game that I can compare it to. But I mean, again, it's unique. There's a shooting component. You've got helicopters that are trying to shoot you down, and you've got to you know, negotiate them as well as the other cars on the road. One of these days, I'll have to pick this up again and see if I can still get it done. Not that I could ever get it done in the past, but see how far I can get. Now we turn to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This was, I still remember when I was a kid, and I've told this story on the podcast before, but when I was a kid, I spent, I think it was maybe my 12th birthday in a cabin in the backwoods of West Virginia with my parents. I had no video games, nothing. This was before I had a Game Boy. All I had were books, and my uncle had a bunch of original series Star Trek episodes on VHS. And but my birthday fell during this vacation, and my dad drove me to Kmart, and he let me pick out a Nintendo game. And I remember, clear as day, trying to decide between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Caveman games. Caveman games known on the Amiga and possibly other places as the UGG Olympics. And this is, I chose Caveman games. It was a bad choice looking back on it. I ended up getting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles later on down the line. And so I ended up with both games. But if you have to choose between the Turtles and the Caveman games, go with the Turtles. Just trust me. So this is still, I think there were still a lot of people that were not fully aware of the Turtles at this time, because I don't think the movie had come out yet, or the movie was still very new. And the cartoon, same with I think probably the cartoon was a couple years old. Maybe more kids knew about this than I thought by '89. It's interesting, the cover of the game, the Turtles are still sporting their signature all red masks like you see on the comics. But in the character select screen, and of course all throughout the game, the Turtles are wearing their colored masks. I just recently finished watching a Netflix documentary on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as part of the Toys That Made Us series. And the story is fascinating about how pretty much everybody thought the Turtles were lame until they found the right person, and then boom, the Turtles were everywhere. And I was definitely right in the target market, being 8 years old in 1989, to capitalize on Turtle Mania. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original game, is interesting because it switches perspective. There's an overworld where it's an action overworld. It's not like Super Mario Brothers 3, where you sort of go around to different buildings and different sewers, and you move around through different sections of the game. And then the action takes place below ground or in buildings in the sewers, and that is a side-scrolling affair.